We'll call this regularly scheduled meeting of Bridgewater Town Council to order, our first meeting of 2021, which arguably is not off to a better start than 2020 was, but things seem to have calmed down a little bit south of the border. So welcome back, everybody. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? We have just one that we'll add, which will be policy for land acquisition in the business park. So we'll add that further down the agenda. Other than that addition, anything else from council? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the agenda? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Are there any announcements from members of council? It's been a long time since we've had announcements with everything being canceled in the days of COVID, so I look forward to that returning. Staff introductions. We have Bruce Parks, our fire inspector, and I believe Mr. Feener is here to introduce us to him.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Bruce Parks as the newest member of our engineering department. Bruce started with us on January the 4th as the town's fire inspector. Bruce has previously worked as a fire inspector and an assistant emergency coordinator for the last 9 years. He's been a paramedic with EHS for 27 years and also a volunteer fire department member for 22 years. We are pleased that he's joined us, and we welcome Bruce.
Excellent, thank you. And welcome, Bruce, to the team. Anything you want to share with us?
I'd just like to say thanks for the opportunity to work with the town of Bridgewater, and as Larry said, I've been here for a week now, and everybody's been very friendly, patient, helping, and it's been a very positive experience so far. So.
Awesome. Welcome to the team.
Great, thank you.
I think you should sit through the whole council meeting. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
You need a motion for that?
I'm not sure I'd even be impressed if you did sit through the whole council meeting. I did say there were no announcements, but I should just say a thank you to council and staff who gave up their Friday evening and most of Saturday as we prepared our strategic plan for the next 4 years. So this will come back to council for some more discussion and revision, and of course introduction of it to the public as we go through all the things that are on our plate, not just as a council or as an organization, but on our plate as a community. We've talked about wastewater and Exit 12A and all the various pressures that we face now and the ones that have been in place for years, and so we know we're coming into a tricky time in terms of budget pressures. We know that things like COVID hasn't helped, but we also know that there's some incredible opportunities on the horizon, especially when we talk about Exit 12A and all that can do for the town. So there will be a lot more on this, not just the strategic plan, but the budget and the budget process. We're going to talk about at the end of the night tonight, we're going to talk about the budget timeline, but there'll be some more engagement with the public. We're hoping that there'll be an opportunity to do some Talk Bridgewater sessions safely following the COVID-19 protocols, where council would go out into the public and engage. So we'll make sure that those are advertised and the public is notified of that as we move forward. Going down to planning items. The first one is 641 King Street, the closing of the development agreement. I believe we have our Director of Community Development here to walk us through a couple of planning items. So.
This is just a quick update to let you know that the development agreement application has been closed for 641 King Street. And that was because some of the So we initially got their application in September of 2019, and there was a public meeting, late October, early November, and then more information was required. They've also been working on their development proposal, and the changes and the length of time would necessitate a new public meeting, which is effectively a new process. So we, after not receiving the information for some time and over a year of inactivity, we had a conversation with the applicant and closed the file so that when they are ready to resubmit, they will make a new application process, which will start a new public meeting and go through the new process. So it was just simply to inform you of that. That's all.
Are there any questions from members of council on that? Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
So our next item is 7.2, REC zone on 123 Empire Street. So I think.
Just getting the presentation up. They're using the new app.
Okay.
No. Oh, it just back out.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. Honorable Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Councillors. I'm Nelson. I'm a junior planner with the Community Development Department. And I'm presenting on the first reading for proposed changes to the recreation zone. So there's 8 properties zoned recreation in Bridgewater. And the intent of the recreation zone is to accommodate land for recreation and organize sport activities, and it distinguishes lands from traditional park spaces and conservation land. And these are the properties zoned recreation in Bridgewater, and I want you to focus in on the Bridgewater Memorial Arena, which is on Empire Street, just off of Churchill. And the proposal is to amend the permitted site plan approval land uses for the recreation zone to include parks facilities and transit facilities. That's better. And so, sorry, I just took off my mask because, yeah, instead of hyperventilating. And so this requires concurrent amendments to the municipal planning strategy as well as the land use bylaw. And the reason why we're making changes to the entire recreation zone is because there's really no other zone in Bridgewater that has parks facilities and transit facilities, or would be compatible, would have compatible land uses to allow for parks and transit facilities. And because the arena is currently used for a number of other land uses which suit recreation really well. So the definitions that we're proposing for transit and parks facility are very similar. They're essentially to allow for storage as well as operations, which could include maintenance and repair of equipment and that sort of thing. So the amended recreation zone, were this to be passed, would include the current authorized uses as well as the 2 new land uses by site plan approval. And the site plan approval process would allow the town a little bit more control over different site characteristics. So you're looking at things like the location of the facilities on the site, vegetation, pathways, and that kind of thing. So anything that would mitigate the impact on surrounding properties. So these are the current authorized uses. Most properties zoned recreation currently have parks, think of Kinsman Field, or libraries like the LCLC. But there's really a wide-ranging number of uses that are permitted under the recreation zone. So engineering is the applicant for this proposed amendment, and they propose this amendment to allow for parks operations at the Bridgewater Memorial Arena, and also for Bridgewater Transit to be able to use the Memorial Arena, mostly for storing of the buses and that kind of thing, and not for any kind of major mechanical improvements to the bus fleet. So like I talked about a little bit earlier, so the site plan approval process, it just allows the planning department a little bit more control when approving developments. And it also ensures, because a lot of recreation zone properties are next to residential areas where residents may have concerns, it just ensures that any new facility that would be placed in property zone recreation would be compatible with those surrounding residential land uses. So the municipal planning strategy sets out policies for land uses, including for the recreation zone, and the land use bylaw sets out rules to achieve those policies. And so the addition of parks and transit facilities does align with what the MPS and LUB or land use bylaw currently states. Looking at 5 out of the 15 relevant objective statements, which are kind of the overarching policy statements in the municipal planning strategy, parks and transit facilities do not pose a risk with the existing surrounding land uses, especially if we use a site plan approval process. The proposed changes would increase the land diversity that's currently permitted in the zone. It also maximizes the use of an existing facility. So if you look at all of the current uses of the Bridgewater Memorial Arena, we're kind of using that old existing building for as many uses as possible, right? Which a lot of facilities aren't able to be used for a lot of diverse land uses, but the Bridgewater Memorial Arena is kind of unique in that regard. It is a historic building, so it was used for 60 years as a recreation facility, and it does commemorate World War II veterans. That's kind of in the name. And it doesn't currently compromise existing parks or open spaces, primarily because a lot of the use would be within the facility. And we're not really looking to use the transit or parks facilities in any other property zone recreation, because this is a long-term investment in the Memorial Arena, so we wouldn't say, build a new transit facility at Kinsman Park any time in the near future. So I look at item 6 is required for land use bylaw amendments, and also commercial and residential policies will be met through the site plan approval process. There was a public participation meeting, so it was held on December 9th. 2 members of the public attended, and their primary concerns were around other property zone rec in Bridgewater. So they thought that if parks and transit facilities were allowed in the recreation zone at all, that they might see in 10 years a new transit facility right across from them, say in the dog park or Kinsman Park, and then really mitigated those concerns with my previous argument that this is a long-term investment in one particular building, and it's very unlikely that we'd build a new transit facility in Kinsman Field. So my recommendation is that, or staff's recommendation is that council give first consideration to the proposed municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw text amendment, and schedule a public hearing for February 8th, 2021.
Questions?
So next steps would be to schedule a public hearing, and then there'd be a number of provincial approvals. There you go.
Okay, thanks, Nelson. Questions of the junior planner? That sounds like a question.
Yeah.
So what if there isn't a long-term investment in BMA and we need to put a transit facility somewhere? We then have the ability to put it at Kinsman Field or Generations Active Park or any other of the rec zones, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
By right?
Yeah,
As
most
of right,
properties.
right?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So you're looking perhaps for some caveats to prevent it?
Maybe.
I mean,
It's town.
beyond just the common sense that it wouldn't make sense to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you do that?
And you'd have to, if you wanted to be specific to that parcel, that's typically frowned upon in terms of spot zoning, which is what you would end up doing unless you allowed them by, well, I mean, it's difficult for us to enter into a development agreement with ourselves, so even that type of tool wouldn't be something you would use on a town facility, right?
Can I ask that?
Yeah.
So a private company could come in and buy or own rec-zoned property, correct?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
correct. And
Okay.
currently, the curling club is a private entity that
Yeah,
could
okay,
theoretically use that site as transit or a parks facility if they decided to.
So if I could just layer onto that, so this is completely hypothetical. If the curling club entered into a partnership with Maritime Bus, and Maritime Bus wanted to park 2 large buses there, they could, in theory, do that as of right after we make this change.
Yeah, in theory, and the site plan approval process would ensure that the impact of that would be mitigated, but there would be limitations through a site plan approval process. Yeah. Oh, right, and yeah, thanks, Nick. So also the definitions that we propose for transit and parks facility are very specific to municipal transit fleets. So yeah.
Does that help you a little bit? No? Other questions? Councilor Thorburn?
So we could, if we wished, put a building or a facility up at any one of those park locations that once this is passed, for storage shed or whatever,
For transit
For
facilities?
transit.
just a building for
For
storage of
parks,
equipment,
yeah,
for parks.
yeah.
But we have storage sheds
We have
in our
storage
parks
now.
now,
Yeah.
right? At Kinsman
Yeah.
Field,
Yeah.
there's a barn. and-
Yeah.
So this only changes for the transit facility.
Okay. But it did mention both on the
Yeah.
thing. It didn't just mention transit, that's why I brought that. Thank you.
Other questions? Someone prepared to make a motion?
I will, Your
Councilor
Worship.
Thorburn, thank you.
I would move that town council of the town of Bridgewater give first consideration to the amendments of the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw to allow parks and transit facilities as permitted uses in the recreation zone as contained in Appendix A of document 20-190A, and schedule a public hearing during the regular scheduled council on February the 8th, 2021.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Frazier. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Our next item is correspondence for information, and we have what I would say is a disappointing response from the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing about the Nova Scotia Affordable Housing Commission. And so this letter, just for the public's awareness. Concern was raised when the province announced this housing commission that there was an absence of municipal representation. Only HRM and CBRM have elected officials on this committee. And while the Administrative Association of Nova Scotia, Association of Administrators, I guess, has representation, there's no representation from the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities. There's no rural representation from either a political body or from the staffing side. So our request was that that be changed, and so that there would be some representation, because whether the minister likes it or not, we are in our communities day in and day out. We are the ones that get the calls and the emails and bump into people at the grocery store and the mall. The response was that, I'm paraphrasing, but they just certainly weren't interested in having municipal representation. They did note that my name was given to the person in charge, and they hopefully would be in contact to lend a voice to it. That has not happened. This, I believe, wraps up at the end of March. So there's 3 months to gather all this information with the absence of the local level. So hugely disappointed, and I've expressed that to our MLA. I've expressed that to the minister, and I mean, you were on the NSFM call. I would say 100% of mayors and deputy mayors that were on that call were dumbfounded.
Yeah, and NSFM is not giving up this fight, and has written to Association of Municipal Administrators as well to request that they perhaps remove themselves from this committee unless NSFM is also sitting on that commission. So
Good. I'm glad to see those things
moving forward with that.
Great. Any questions on that? All right. Moving on. Correspondence for action. Bridgewater Hotel requests to waive interest on property taxes. I see our Director of Finance is here. So this is from the new owners of the Bridgewater Hotel. Turn it over to Mrs. Hopkins.
Hello. So we received a request from this specific property owner for interest relief on their property taxes that are owing for the current fiscal year. And so as part of that, we look into what our policies are, and the MGA permits us to charge interest, and our own policies require that interest at 1% per month, which is 12% on an annual basis. Town Council also, just right after I arrived, or immediately preceding my arrival, had introduced a property tax financing program which allowed our residents, and this property would have qualified, to apply by the middle of July for our property tax financing program, which would have permitted a 1% per year interest rate. However, they had not applied. We only had one applicant, and several discussions with folks that chose not to apply. However, this was not one of those. And that deadline's passed, and council didn't extend that program to the final tax bill because it hadn't been well used by property owners. And so they asked us to bring their request to council. And so you have that information available to you. We don't provide interest relief to other taxpayers, and we had the program available during the time frame where they were owners of this property. And so really council needs to decide if they wish to provide interest relief, or if we're unable, or potentially we could reopen the property tax financing. However, the deadline to pay both your interim and final tax bills has passed already.
Are there any questions? Director of Finance. I mean, this program was well advertised, not just by Bridgewater, but the province, our neighboring municipalities. It was in, I'm assuming, every single form of media. So, and again, province-wide, so I know the province was advertising it as well. So I know this owner was not in the province at the time, but still should have been aware of the programs that were going on. I would like, sure, let's have a motion that we can continue with the discussion.
I move that council for the town of Bridgewater direct staff to respond to the property owner of 35 High Street advising that council will not provide interest relief for the property tax amount.
Seconded by Councilor Bergier. Discussion. It's pretty straightforward. I know it's not the answer that the owner wants to hear, but we had a program in place. We don't offer interest rate relief for other applicants. So, ready for the question?
Question?
All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Reports and recommendations. Region 6 Intermunicipal Committee budget approval is there, and Councillor Thorburn, I believe you are on that committee.
Yes.
And you are the
Chair.
new chair. Yeah. So congratulations on that.
It's quite a committee, a large board. The different units, there's 12 of us from different units, plus the staff, so it's quite a large committee. And as a matter of fact, next week we have a Provincial chairs meeting, which I have to go to on January the 22nd. But I think for every 90 cents we put into that, we get a lot more than that back out of it, Region 6, through the Divert Nova Scotia funding and whatnot. So this is, and we just got a new administrative assistant for Region 6, replacing Valda Watch, and I sent that out to you. And we're very, very fortunate because she worked for West Hants Regional Municipality that worked with Valda in her job with Region 6. So pretty excited to be on that committee. I can see big things coming down the road, and this budget is a small part of the work that we do, and I look forward to council support.
Are there any questions of Councillor Dufferin in his position as chair, perhaps? Would you like to make the motion then?
I would, Your Worship. I would move that Town Council of the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of Region 6 Intermunicipal Committee and approve the 2021-22 Regional 6 budget in a total of $913,830 as presented in your document 2-216.
Seconded by Councillor McDonald. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chapter 184, tax exemptions for non-profit organizations bylaw amendment. This next item, are you speaking to that one?
Yep. So we've had an application, and the application has come in for tax exemption for 2 properties on King Street. The application, just pulling up here, is on your agenda, and it is from a non-profit organization, if I can get there. Yeah, here we go.
From Family Service Association,
Yeah.
Western Nova Scotia.
Thank you, yeah. And it is for the civic addresses that we have, one being the former Rofi's building, and the one next to that, which was the former Gau's Home Furniture building. So both owned by the same association, and they're applying for tax exemption. The former Rofi's building, it's commercial on the bottom and residential on the top, so they're applying for tax exemption for the commercial component, which would be the bottom level of that. And the report notes what the impact is budget-wise with respects to that. The recommendation from staff is that building clearly has permits in place and approvals for the conversion of that building to its intended use, which would meet the requirements of the MGA in terms of intended use being a service that a municipality may or could be expected to perform. So we provide tax exemption to services such as food banks and those types of things, which provide a community service that would be similar to what the proposed use here is, and that is to provide assistance to individuals in a transitory manner. The other building, I believe it's 641, if I get the 2 mixed up, the former Gau's building, does not have any approvals in place for the intended use, and there's no evidence of that. In fact, we just closed the file on the development agreement application. So there's nothing that leads to the conclusion that there is a use going in that building. And for that reason, the recommendation on that is that we do not award a tax exemption under the bylaw. To make the tax exemption, you're required to amend the schedule of the bylaw to add a property to it. So the recommendation would be that you amend the bylaw to add the former Rofi's building in for the commercial component and have that fully exempt, and not award the second, which is the former Gau's building.
Questions? Trustee Mary?
More of a clarification, I guess. So what would prevent the organization from leaving the commercial space and leasing it to someone else who is not a non-profit, despite the rest of the building being used as a non-profit entity? Do you know what I mean? Owned by the non-profit entity.
Yeah. Well, theoretically, that could happen with any property that we give a tax exemption to.
Right. And we're aware.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I guess that's a risk. And
There's
we
no-
would get it the next year round, or with the, actually it's 3, we'd amend our bylaw to pull the property off the list is what we'd have to do. So I believe the bylaw states that they would remain on the list until the use ceases, or they don't reapply. They're on there for 3 years automatically, and they're required to make an application to go beyond 3 years. But if they cease to exist, and then that tax exemption would cease to exist in terms of the use. So if Tim Hortons rented it,
Yeah.
the tax exemption wouldn't be able to apply anymore, and we'd have to do an adjustment.
For certain. We
Yeah.
can- Okay.
Yeah.
Like next day kind of thing. I mean-
However long it takes us to amend the
Yeah,
bylaw
yeah,
to take
yeah.
them
Okay,
off, yeah,
okay.
and then we
All right.
do a calculation,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm struggling with this one, mostly because the tax exemption is for like, on the property, it's based on the service that they're providing out of that facility. There is no service being provided out of that facility. Like, the timing to me is, I don't like the timing, because you're asking for a tax exemption for something you're not actually doing. The example I use is, if the curling club ceased to be a curling club, we wouldn't give a tax exemption just because the building is owned by the curling club. Do you know what I mean? It has to serve the purpose that the tax exemption is for. Because, to your point, we don't give tax exemptions on the property just because it's the property. That's why we're not doing 641. So I don't understand the difference between the old Rofi building and 641. They're both empty.
Yeah.
So why would the request not come after they've demonstrated? Because this could be empty, for all I know, it could be empty for 2 more years. Why would we give a tax exemption when?
That choice is purely council's to make based on how you feel it complies with the bylaw. The bylaw essentially says it has to be, it basically says it's providing a service that might otherwise be a responsibility of council. They have the opportunity to apply for the tax exemption. So you could make the argument that they haven't finished their renovations, they're not done, you're paying full taxes.
You had me provide the service.
Yeah.
So, if the motion gets put to the floor, I won't be supporting the motion based on that. Councilor Dufferin.
I agree with you, and I was going to bring that up, because that building's been dormant now for pretty near a year. We was down a year ago and presented them with that award from the Heritage Advisory Committee, recognizing the property and the work that they had done to improve it. And there's no occupancy in there yet, and we don't know when there will be. So I, too, will not be supporting that until we have more facts and information.
Councilor Cola.
And should we not approve this, we would suggest to the developer they could reapply once they have the building occupied.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Is someone prepared to make a motion? Or to put this motion on the floor? It's one of those things I have to ask 3 times, like calling for nominations. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? That'll be my second request. 3rd time. No, I'm not seeing anyone prepared to make a motion, so perhaps we could...
We should do a motion to deny the applications,
okay.
so that we can formally say the council denied the request. So you have an application before you should say yes or no to that.
Okay, so perhaps the bottom part of that, if someone is prepared to, that section that says the council not approve the application for a full tax exemption, I would suggest for 529 and 641 King. 629, sorry, and 641 King Street, as it does not, well, I still think that neither meets the criteria for the tax exemption. Is someone prepared to make that motion? Councilor
I
McDonald?
would move that council for the town of Bridgewater not approve the application for a full tax exemption for 641 King Street and 629 King Street. Okay. As it does not meet the criteria required for tax exemption.
We have seconder, Councilor Thorburn, and we will, in advising Family Service Association of Western Nova Scotia, will advise them that they should reapply when the use is as
So
stated.
the deadline is December 31st, so they'll have to wait till the next round to get for the next fiscal year, but hopefully it's occupied by then. Yeah.
Okay. Does everyone understand that? Any further discussion, Deputy Mayor?
Just a quick, if they occupy before that period of time, there's no
No.
retroactive component?
No, because it's a budget issue for
Yeah,
us,
fair
right? We
enough.
have to
Okay.
budget, yeah.
Okay. We could, something
The
to ask
bylaw-
for giving them a grant, though, or something like that.
They could always apply for a grant, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but the bylaw is quite clear on the deadline.
Further discussion?
Question?
Question being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. And I should clarify, I believe everyone is supportive of the work they do. It's just, it's the timing of the application. It has nothing to do with the work that this group provides. Just want to make sure that's clear. The next item is fire inspection sales services to the town of Lunenburg. So this is pretty straightforward. It is sale of fire inspection services from the town of Bridgewater to the town of Lunenburg. We have similar agreements in place with municipality district of Lunenburg as they do with us. Prepared to make a motion? Yes,
Sure.
thank you.
I move the council for the town of Bridgewater authorize the execution of an agreement with the town of Lunenburg for the provision of fire inspection services per the terms proposed and discussed in camera.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Bergier. Further discussion?
Question.
Question be called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. 10.4 is market analysis, Bridgewater Business Park. Document 20-176A. I see Mr. Davidson coming down.
Good evening. Happy New Year too, since it's the first time I've seen many of you. On the market analysis, I was here in October, or staff was here in October, to request the award for engineering services for the town master plan to Design Point. At the time, decision was deferred on the provisional items to give staff or afford staff the time to confirm the scope of work and associated cost with the proponent and reporting back to council. At the time, staff did not recommend the award of the provisional items, market analysis, and an implementation plan, basically because of the over expenditure as well as the large range or variance in the submitted prices. So we did meet with we did meet with Design Point before Christmas to look at or review the scope of work. And the scope of work includes exploring the town's vision for the park, the analysis of the business park's competitive position, the supply and demand of the business park's lands regionally, case studies, options for a theme or branded park, exploring links to existing development within the park, finally giving final build-out considerations for the master plan. There was another item about developing a communication strategy, but we felt best, we have very good staff on hand to do that, especially with the new economic development officer. So we're not recommending to do that. Staff agree that it's important to develop a vision for the Bridgewater Business Park that would guide build-out and installation of services. It's also important not to be competitive with our jurisdictional neighbors, but rather prosper together, build upon existing development and strategic initiatives such as Energize Bridgewater. What's available could be a niche that is unique to Bridgewater. We understand that the market analysis also needs to reflect that design has started on exit 12, so we hope that there won't be any limitations with respect to that. But we will be passing along those designs as part of the market analysis. With the award, we do have to respect that it does take time, so would it push out the completion of the master plan by 3 to 5 weeks. So we would, if awarded, the master plan for Glen Allen would continue the work on it, but the overall report for both areas wouldn't be presented to council until the end of April. The project, since we already awarded the engineering services, is already over budget, which is one of staff's concerns. And if we award the market analysis, it would go over budget even more. But staff would endeavor to manage these over expenditures within the existing capital budget, because we do understand that some of the projects haven't started yet. So the options in front of us right now would be to award the market analysis, specifically items 1 through 6, or not doing the communications plan, not to award or not to award the work because it's over budget, or not to award the work and direct staff to work with the consultant to rescope with a specified cap. Staff are recommending that we award the market analysis to Design Point Engineering and Surveying Limited for the total price of $20,300 plus HST.
Okay. Questions of our engineer? My question would be, if this was awarded, how does the delay in receiving that report impact our budget? Like how do we stick to our proposed budget timeline if we're missing?
You mean our capital budget for 2021?
Yeah.
This would go over into April, right?
Yeah.
So a portion of it may be paid out of this year's budget with the remainder out of next year.
But there's going to be information that comes back in this report
Oh.
that is going to affect the 2022, 23, or 21, 22, well, I'm getting ahead of myself,
Yeah.
budget year, potentially. Or
The-
not.
I might more so the next year.
Okay.
Years.
Yeah, because the 2021 is, we won't be seeing construction out there probably till probably spring 2022, more than likely, right?
Okay.
So next year is really a planning year.
Okay.
So this would fit in well, I would say, with our ability to do some planning. The master plan, as you say, will be delayed by 3 to 5 weeks by doing this.
Yeah.
But they'll fit together, which is important, which is, why the delay, I think, would be acceptable in that case. And-
Any information that we get during this time, we'll be updating senior management,
Mhm.
and they can reflect it appropriately as you work through the budgeting process, if changes are needed.
Mhm.
But I know that with hopes that the presentation happens the end of April, it's not too far into the existing budget, or the proposed new budget.
Yeah, and I would say next year, maybe you may have funds for marketing and that type of thing, like to develop materials and that, but the actual capital piece of it wouldn't be next year.
Okay. No, that was my concern. Are there other questions? Council Caldwell?
Is this something that we could consider a little further down the road? I'm wondering about getting input from the economic development officer. Can we hire one?
You could, but I would suggest that that person may be coming in the middle of it. So the individuals, they're actually subcontracting this out to individuals who...
Group ATM.
Yeah, who have experience in this field. What it will do is if we wait, it will delay kind of knowing, it's an important part in terms of land use, right? So it's going to tell you kind of what's feasible, like what could you expect for market demand and how you tailor that area to that. So it may come back and say industrial, it could say that you should be looking at retail, and that kind of influences how we plan for that area. So
Take some of the,
Yeah.
by completing the market analysis, it does take some of the guesswork out.
Yeah.
The expectation that there are, when people do come knocking, that we have a plan. But at least when it comes to the design of services and planning it out, we have some idea now rather than waiting for what's going to potentially be there.
Mhm. I would say it's a pretty standard approach to how you would conceptually look at planning an area like that, of that size. So you're not guessing what the land uses are, you're going to the experts and saying, do that analysis and tell us what the demands are and what we could expect, and then that will fit into how we lay out our infrastructure and our roads.
But to Councilor Caldwell's point, the economic development officer will hopefully be on staff while this report is being...
Oh, yeah.
So that there could be an opportunity for some input. Because
Yeah.
I see your point. Other questions? This is far too easy for Matt.
I'm okay with that.
Does anyone have any difficult questions?
I can defer to Larry or Nick.
Is someone prepared to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Ms.
Motion,
Bernier.
portion. That council for the town of Bridgewater award the market analysis as per RFP 2020-10 and subsequent proposal, specifically items 1 to 6, to Design Point Engineering and Survey Limited for a total price of $20,300 plus HST for $21,170 and 10 cents net HST.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Thorburn. Further discussion?
Question.
Oh,
Sorry. Can you just run through 1 to 6?
The items?
Yeah.
So I renamed them for ease rather than looking at the proposal, but so they're going to do the vision for the park.
Yeah.
So specifically is, what respective current retail, industrial, or commercial and institutional developments out there, what they've looking at demographic. They're also looking at the analysis of the business park's competitive position, both regionally as well as provincial-wide. They're going to look at case studies, up to 4, of who we'd like to compare with. They've also talked about some options of theme or branded especially with Energized Bridgewater, as Nick has pointed out to me, there might be themes within that. We're also, some of this land is backing of Parkview, so there may be something we could, a theme within that as well. Something outside of maybe commercial or retail, because we don't want to detract from downtown either. So we may want to have something out there, and links to maybe already existing development, and just build out considerations, which is already linked within the master plan exercise anyways.
Is that okay? Any other questions? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next item is RFP 2020-13, Engineering Services Traffic Operations Analysis.
Trying to work through our outstanding items in the capital budget, that's for sure. So the 2020-21 operating capital budget included a traffic operations analysis of 10 of the 11 streetlight signalized intersections, as well as several key unsignalized intersections within town. The goal would be to create conceptual designs complete with recommended improvements for the studied intersections. The recommendations would be focused on safety, capacity, multimodal transportation, and accessibility. The RFP was issued in early November, and closed at the end of November. 6 submissions were received, and they were reviewed by a staff committee. The evaluation criteria generally described as quality proposal, qualifications, methodology, and pricing. We have been using a dual envelope system, so we review technical score first. If they achieve the minimum score, then we open up their price. The minimum score is 80%, I do like high marks, or 56 points out of 70. So the average scores are listed below in the evaluation scoring table. The highest overall score is WASP. Their proposed price to complete the review of 10 signalized intersections is $30,000, $115 plus HST, and the provisional price total of $16,315 plus HST to complete the 12 unsignalized intersections. The total budget is $50,000 to do that, to do this project this year, and subject to award, we would anticipate being under budget, which is good news. I don't get that very often.
Bouncing up the other one.
By $1,582.80. The staff are recommending the award of the signalized intersections and provisionally priced unsignalized intersections. However, staff are asking for the latitude to select the provisional items but not to exceed the project total. This would provide the latitude to modify the unsignalized intersections to do the highest priority ones first, but also if we find out a little bit more work is required on those, we can complete those, have something completed rather than starting another one. It also allows the opportunity for staff to do some of the work in-house. The options to complete, the options before you would be to award the traffic operations analysis, including provisional items listed only to the highest score, proponent with the highest score, to award the traffic analysis with including provisional items modified by staff but not to exceed the total project budget to the highest proponent, or to award the traffic operations analysis excluding provisional items to the highest overall score proponent. Staff are recommending that we award the engineering services for traffic operations analysis RFP 2013 to WASP for a total price of $30,115 plus HST. And number 2, to award the provisional items subject to the discretion of staff, but not to exceed the overall project budget of $50,000 net HST.
Questions of Mr. Davidson? Deputy Mayor.
Once we award, how long will it take them to start and finish, do you think?
They did anticipate to be on schedule with this, but I don't have their schedule cemented in my brain right now, but the goal was to be completed by the end of March. So as long as if things work out, they should be able to complete it by the end of fiscal year.
So Matt, given that, like places like Hurdle, Aberdeen, do they push in hypotheticals there to understand because of the new apartment building, I guess, the flow there, or is that something you guys might say, well, we'll take that one?
So at this point, all the intersections that are on the list, both unsignalized and signalized, we provided all the information we could to them so they understand what the current situation is, so they would be aware of the development there. But the plan would be to probably during the kickoff meeting, we'll get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty on each one to determine where staff can potentially help or assist. Or they may come back and say we need more assistance, or we may need more time on that one.
Other questions from members of council? Councilor Thorburn.
We are approving a budget item of $31,403.92, but yet the total budget is $50,000. So how do we get a difference of $1,500 and some dollars? There's $18,600 difference.
There's the provisional items in there.
Okay, but it's not reflected in here. We're voting on
You're going for
31,000.
the-
Why aren't we have those provisional items in here, part of that same motion?
The motion is to award the provisional items subject to the discretion of staff.
But there's no dollar value, Your
They
Worship.
maybe go up to the total of the budget of
Yeah, we
50,000.
wouldn't exceed.
Not to exceed the 50,000.
Okay.
Other questions from members of council? Someone prepared to make a motion? Quiet group tonight. Councilor McDonald.
And move that council for the town of Bridgewater award the engineering services for the traffic operation analysis, RFP 2020-13, to WSP for a total price of $30,115 plus HST for $31,403.92 net HST, and award the provisional items subject to the discretion of staff, but not to exceed the overall project budget of $50,000 net HST.
Seconded by Councilor Frazier. Further debate? None. Question being called. Those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Application to purchase land, 381 Glen Allen Drive. That is before you. And we have our development officer here if people have questions. It's,
This one was considered by council previously, and the offer that came in, I believe, was 20,000 thereabouts, and you had asked for that to be discussed.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what's come back is the new offer of
Mhm.
25,000. What is council's wish?
The motion on the
Yes,
floor?
please.
That council for the town of Bridgewater accept the $25,000 offer, less commission, and authorize execution of the purchase and sale agreement and buyback agreement for 381 Glen Allen Drive, conditional on acceptable provision to maintain the drainage infrastructure.
Seconder, Secretary Tanner. Discussion or questions? Again, Mr. Brown is here. If someone has any questions? Questions being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. I know you were so excited to come up and tell us about that. Excuse me. Next item is agreement and purchase and sale 61 Logan Road. So, do you want to come up and maybe just give, maybe for the public, because this is commercial, just a little overview?
Sure. So 61 Logan Road staff received an offer to purchase, it will be 1.5 acres of land subject to a subdivision. Like I said, 61 Logan Road. Upon evaluation of the topographical constraints for the property, staff have estimated considerable cost to bring that up to an acceptable grade for development. The lot is not serviced. Unserviced lots in the business park have recently been marketed at right around $20,000 per acre. So, however, based on the site constraints for the property, staff believe this lot is worth next to nothing. Therefore, the $5,000 offer is deemed to reflect market value, and staff recommend the sale.
Questions? Any questions on that? Someone prepared to put a motion on the floor? Councillor Caldwell.
I move that council for the town of Bridgewater accept the $5,000 less commission offer and authorize execution of the purchase and sale agreement and buyback agreement with BMN Properties Limited for the property being 61 York Street.
That should probably say 61 Logan Road, I believe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
61 Logan Road.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Thorburn. Any discussion?
Question.
Question being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next is agreement to purchase sale of 432 York Street. Do you want to just give us a quick rundown on that one, please?
So this is another property in the business park. It would be 3.5 acres upon subdivision. This lot is also not serviced, and again, unserviced lots have been valued at $20,000 per acre. The offer is $65,000, and it's deemed to reflect market value. Staff recommend the sale with a buyback or performance agreement requiring construction within mutually acceptable timeframe.
Any questions for the development officer? Feel like making another motion?
Sure. I move that council for the town of Bridgewater accept the $65,000 offer, less commission, and authorize execution of the purchase and sale agreement and buyback agreement for 432 York Street.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Tanner. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. We were going to discuss, I don't know if that's in there yet, directing staff to create a policy, come back to council, on land purchase and sale agreements within the business park. Right now, we don't really have a policy, so we go back and forth a lot on everything from buyback agreements to acceptable level of commissions for council. So I guess what we're looking for is direction from council, a motion of council to direct staff to prepare a policy for, again, purchase and sale of land in the business park and bring that back to council. Is someone prepared to make that motion?
I so move.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Tanner. Any discussion?
Question.
Questions are being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. So that'll obviously come back and we'll discuss it and see where it goes from there. Our next item is 10.9, Facade Improvement Program Funding Request, 655 King Street and 7 Dufferin Street. And Mr. Brown, busy night for you.
Okay, thanks. For 655 King Street, an application was received seeking $1,717.50 grant to reflect 50% of the eligible costs associated with facade improvements. And this is the ARC. The renovations will include the addition of a new storefront to the retail side of their operations. The Downtown Plan Advisory Committee recommends that council provide the requested grant under the town's facade improvement program.
Okay, and do you want to just run the other one too? 7
Oh, yeah,
Dufferin
sorry,
Street?
7 Dufferin Street, so application seeking $1,500, a $1,500 grant. The renovations there would include the installation of a canopy or an awning at the base of the second story along the King Street facade and around the Chamford corner, angle corner.
What was that corner called?
It's a Chamford corner.
A Chamford corner. Did you all know that you were going to learn something at council tonight? Wow. I'm going to try to use that in a sentence in the next 2 weeks.
Would you like a motion,
Yes,
Your
please,
Worship?
thank you.
That council for the town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of the Downtown Planning Advisory Committee and provide grants to improve public facades of buildings in the downtown business district, specifically in response to the applications as follows. 655 King Street for $1,717.50 upon successful project completion by the end of the 2020-21 fiscal year end, and 7 Dufferin Street for $1,500 upon successful project completion by the end of the 2020-21 fiscal year.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor McDonald. Further discussion? Councilor Thorburn.
That doesn't give them a lot of time to complete those projects, because we're into January now. That gives them 2 months.
Does that give them enough time? It takes them to the end of March, right?
7 Dufferin should be fairly straightforward. The awning installation, I've been told that they fully expect to have that done as soon as weather cooperates. And that's always the difficult part of the end of the fiscal year in relation to exterior working. If the weather doesn't cooperate, then sometimes they can be at jeopardy of not meeting that deadline, that March 31st end of fiscal year. The ARC, yeah, it's a larger project, but they fully expect to also have it completed by March 31st. So those are the discussions that we have with those applicants. And if they do not have it done, the option would be actually just to come back again and apply for it next year, in the next fiscal year, and then of course come back to council and ask council again to grant those funds. But there is a cutoff at the end of March 31st if these projects are not finished.
So the risk there is that this is coming out of this year's pot of money. They reapply next year, it comes out of next year's pot of money.
It's a conditional approval, so council has provided or given a few or several so far this year. Not all those projects are done, so it's kind of it's almost a fluid pot of money. It's not all spent until those projects are actually completed. In this case, it's still under the $35,000 budget, but yeah, it's always the case that one or more of the projects may not get completed in the fiscal year, so the money's not spent until the projects are actually done. But yeah, it would come out of next year if that were the case, and if they reapplied and council approved it next year.
Other questions? Deputy Mayor Tim?
Just a quick one, Nick, the canopy, is it identical to the one that they've already installed in most respects? Like there's not going to be any business signage on this new one, is there?
Right, yeah, so no signage.
Okay.
So it's more so an awning than
Yeah.
a canopy. Canopy's kind of a larger structure with typically with signage on it. Some sort of lettering, but this is identical to the one at the back of the building over that rear entrance. Modern in its look.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Maybe before we vote on it, just a reminder to business owners and building owners on King Street that the Facade program is a fantastic way to get 50-cent dollars, really up to $5,000 for the improvement of the facade of your building. I mean, if you're planning on doing any work, especially as we go into our post-COVID recovery, that, knock on wood, is sometime in 2021, I think it's a great opportunity to tap into some funding. That's a relatively easy process to go through, and work on the appearance of your building or business on King Street. So, please apply. Any other questions or comments? We have a mover and seconder. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next item is citizen appointment to the Bridgewater Museum Commission. So filling a vacancy there, which is great. So this is Amanda Rodenizer has applied to be on the Museum Commission. Is someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Caldwell?
I move that council for the town of Bridgewater approve the appointment of Amanda Rodenizer to the Bridgewater Museum Commission for a 3-year term effective January 13th, 2021.
Fantastic. Seconded by Councillor Fougere. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Welcome, Amanda. Next item is appointment to the Energized Bridgewater Advisory Committee for a 3-year term. And so these are 2 business appointments as stakeholders to that. Is someone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Fougere, please.
Yes, that council for the town of Bridgewater appoint Royal Bank of Canada and Michelin North America Canada Incorporated as stakeholder organization members of the Energized Bridgewater Advisory Committee, each for a term of 3 years ending January 11th, 2024, per the committee's term of reference.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Conklin. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. So welcome to Royal Bank and Michelin, both great community supporters. So that's fantastic. Our next item is the Lunenburg County Senior Safety Program December report. And as always, I don't know what else to say. Like this is incredible. I would encourage people to read this, to understand the need, how great the need is. Not every community has this, so we are very fortunate to have this in our region. And maybe I haven't ever said this, you know, it's municipality district of Lunenburg, district of Chester, Bridgewater, Lunenburg, Mahone Bay. So it is regional. It is Lunenburg County. It's not just us. So it serves a lot of people. I don't know if there's any questions on that or anyone wants to add anything. It's just there for information, but hugely important. Pre-COVID, it was important. During COVID, it's been, well, it's a life-saving program. This is fantastic. Next item is grant donations to the South Shore Fieldhouse Society. And I will, once again, just remind the public that this is not town council giving a grant to the field house. Money comes in, people will make a donation to the field house through the town, so the money is just flowing through. So I know that sometimes we get questions, didn't you give a grant to the field house a few times a year? No, we are the, I guess, the trustees of that money until we hand it out. So is someone prepared to make a motion for that? Councillor Caldwell?
I move that council for the town of Bridgewater approve a grant in the amount of $500 to the South Shore Fieldhouse Society for the multi-use facility on Glen Allen Drive.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Fashier. Further discussion?
Question.
Question being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. The next item is, that's a nice segue, is the Designated Community Fund Project Application by the South Shore Fieldhouse Society and HB Studios Sports Center. I don't know if we have staff, oh, yes, Director of Finance, to give a little bit of explanation to the council and to the public.
Sure. So in September of 2019, council had approved a designated community project fund policy. So it's specific to situations similar to the field house. So when we have organizations that have projects on the go, or are doing ongoing operating fundraising as well, but they aren't eligible as a registered charity, so they can't provide donation receipts to someone wanting to make a gift to them. And so this permits them to set up a project fund under the town. They can promote that project fund for a specific program, or in cases like the field house where they're receiving operating grants. The new policy created by the town permits them to apply and do this on a more formal basis. And you had previously approved one for another community organization this year. And so this, we just have a couple of organizations taking, advantage of this program, but hopefully there'll be more in the future. And so funds donated to the town with a request for a specific place for those funds to go, it's still conditional on the town to make that approval and that decision. So even under a designated community fund policy, donations to the field house would still come to council for approval to be paid out, because obviously we'd want to just be sure we're doing our proper role in that.
Great. Are there questions from the Director of Finance?
Not questions, but a comment. I know HAC used that policy once, and it gives the people making donations a receipt for tax purposes as well. So it's a win-win situation. We're helping the community help our community, really. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
No, thanks for saying
Yeah,
that.
in most cases, the organizations involved, like the field house and so on, they don't have the
Okay.
ability to apply to be a registered charity with CRA. They might not have enough charitable activities, even though they're providing recreation or whatever that item might be, but it might not be seen by the CRA as true charitable activities, and so they might not qualify for that. So this gives us the ability to help them by providing donation receipts to those that want to give to them, but doesn't tie their hands, in some of those amounts might be large that they're able to get because people are happy to receive a donation receipt in exchange.
Any other questions? Someone prepared to make a motion?
I will, Your Worship.
Councilor Thornton, thank you.
Well, I would move that council for the town of Bridgewater, in accordance with Policy 97, Designated Community Project Fund, accept a Designated Community Project Fund application submitted by South Shore Fieldhouse Society, HB Studios Sports Center, as presented in document 20-223.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Tanner. Any other debate?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. And our next item is the revocation of appointment, building official, and the appointment of a fire inspector. So this is a very official process. We have to revoke one and then appoint the other. And as we know, Bruce Parks was introduced to us today, so we'd like to appoint him.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah. I don't know if you had anything to add to that. It's pretty straightforward.
No, it's a required appointment under the Fire Safety Act, so you are required to do that in order for him to carry out the official duties as fire inspector. It's something that courts look for if we ever end up there, that he was duly appointed by council. And the other one is merely housekeeping, which is to revoke the appointment of Rebecca as she's no longer employed with the town.
Is someone prepared to make that first motion? Councillor Thurber.
I will, Your Worship.
Thank you.
I would move that Council of the Town of Bridgewater revoke the appointment of Rebecca Zolliger, effective immediately as Municipal Fire Inspector under Section 19(1) of the Fire Safety Act of Nova Scotia, Municipal Building Officer under Section 5.2 of the Building Code Act, and Administrative Dangers and Unsightly Premises under Section 345 of the Municipal Government Act.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Frazier. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Is someone prepared to make a motion to appoint?
I'll
Mr.
continue
Parks?
with that.
Thank you.
I would move that Council of the Town of Bridgewater appoint Bruce Parks as Municipal Fire Inspector under Section 91, Section 1 of the Fire Safety Act of Nova Scotia, and as Administrator of Dangerous and Unsightly Premises under Section 345(1) of the Municipal Government Act of Nova Scotia.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Frazier. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Our last item is 2021-22 budget process. We're approaching budget season. So these will be, the proposed dates are Monday, March 29th. And as Mrs. Porterlow pointed out, that's a fifth Monday of a month. So, sorry. Usually that's a Monday that we don't have meetings, but we have a meeting. So that'll be a budget meeting, discussion and debate, Tuesday, April 6th. That's the day after Easter, that's why it's on a Tuesday. Budget meeting, which will have budget discussion and debate. And then Monday, April 12th, will be regular council meeting with budget discussion, debate, and approval if things go well. If we need more time, we can always add more time. Just as a reminder that when we get into these budget meetings, they are timed items. So if we have a regular council meeting, the budget will generally be at 7. So we'll just go through our regular items, and at 7 o'clock we stop. We go into budget debate and discussion. And then when we wrap that up, if there's items left on the agenda, we go in. So for us, it looks seamless, but that is more so for the public to know that at 7 o'clock we switched to the budget. So if that's what they're interested in, or we're limited to the public that could be here, but if the public were here to talk about the budget or see the budget debate, they would know specifically at 7 o'clock. Did I mess something up?
No. I was just waiting, my e-scribe wouldn't load that memo. So
I was trying to
see
bias
it. I know, thank you.
because
The only thing I would add to that is on Monday, January 25th, council will be receiving the preliminary capital budget, as well as looking at carry forwards from this current fiscal year and any items for capital pre-approval. So that would be another important date to note, I guess, in terms of council's budget review.
We will, as always, advertise. These budget meetings are advertised very thoroughly. There will be, again, I'm hoping that we'll have an opportunity to do some Talk Bridgewater sessions out in the public. Once we get some more information, like our draft budget. My favorite is always to just hang out at the mall at one of the tables with a copy of the draft budget and seek feedback from people. So we'll try to arrange that in a more formal way so that the public knows. But then, of course, you can always reach out to a member of council and discuss your questions or concerns over the budget. There's no hiding the fact that this will be a challenging year. I think coast to coast we're going to see challenging budgets. But as always, our staff will endeavor to do everything they can to make it as lean as possible. Are there any questions or anything anyone wants to raise? This is, that's a lot of talking for all we need to do is set some dates, but I just want to make sure people have a bit of a heads up. Hearing nothing, is someone prepared to make a motion? Deputy Mayor, thank you.
I move that council for the town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of staff and approve the budget process as outlined in document 21-001 and as follows. Monday, March 29th, budget meeting, budget discussion and debate. Tuesday, April 6th, budget meeting, budget discussion and debate. Monday, April 12th, regular council meeting, budget discussion and hopefully approval.
Thank you. Let the minutes show they said hopefully. I want to see that in there. Can I have a seconder, please? Councilor Frazier. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. First meeting of 2021. That's it. Thank you again to staff and council for giving up a Friday night and the bulk of your Saturday for a strategic planning session. First one with the new council members, so I thought that was great. Everyone participated and everyone gave input, and I thought it went really well. We had our morning meeting, as we always do on Monday, with staff, and hearing that we were quite aligned, staff and council, which I think what's important for things to move smoothly, but I think it shows that we're all in the community, right? So we're in the community hearing from people, and staff, they interact with the public all the time, and so as the issues bubble to the surface, we're all kind of aligned on what is most important as we go forward. So that was good. So thanks again. Motion to adjourn. Councilor Thorburn, seconded by Councilor Caldwell. We are adjourned. Thank you.